What's up, everyone? Happy Football Friday. It's my birthday weekend. It's also USFL Week 8 and NFC South season preview. We're at that time of the year, y'all. 100, I think we're 99 days now from the NFL season kickoff. So, very excited to have our season preview series starting. Hopefully, we can get some more people on here in the next couple of shows while we go through the divisions in reverse order, kind of what we did. The draft recaps. We're going from the top of the draft to the bottom now. Starting with the NFC South today. But before we get there, we have some things to talk about. College news, really. SEC, big news in the SEC, talking about conference game scheduling. There's like a big to-do right now in the SEC with the 8 or 9 conference games. So conference sticking with 8 games right now, but eliminating the division format for 2024 at the very least when Texas and Oklahoma join the conference. Might expand to 9 games later, but we know at least for next season, 2024, there will be 8 SEC conference games and no divisions. So it'll be interesting to see what the matchups look and how they do that scheduling for 2024. Also with the SEC, big news in storming the field. The SEC doesn't want it to happen anymore, and they will soon make teams pay the team that they beat if fans storm the field or the court in basketball. It's just ridiculous. Storming the field is a tradition unlike any other in college football and college basketball. I understand it hurts the field. The court, I don't think it hurts as much as a football field, but come on, man. I mean, it's something that kids will remember forever during their collegiate time and after, even way after they are done at that school for 4 years. I think it's ridiculous, the storming the field thing. Let them do it. It's kids. There aren't that many injuries that occur. There are some, I understand that, but the cost benefit, the happiness that it shows to your fan base is a lot higher than not letting them do it. It's really annoying. I wish I would have been able to storm the field at Georgia, but they have the hedges, obviously, so you can't get through. But yeah, it's ridiculous that they're not allowing kids to storm the field anymore. Moving over to the Big 12, they're looking at expansion once again, eyeing Memphis of the American Conference and Colorado for its next expansion moves. I believe Colorado, they are further along in discussions, bringing them back to the Big 12. I believe Colorado was a part of the Big 8, and then they went to the Pac-12 where they currently are. But yeah, I think Colorado back to the Big 12 would be a really solid move. Memphis is an interesting one, but they already took some American teams with Houston coming over this season. So yeah, I think it's a good move. Big 12 trying to just scoop up any teams they can, really, after the loss, their Big 2 loss of Texas and Oklahoma, trying to solidify themselves and stay in the Power 5 conversation and not make it a Power 4. I think the Big 12 is doing a really good job of that. On to NFL news. So we are June 2nd here, so that means the teams picked up cap space at for their post June 1 cuts. The 6 teams did that. The Dolphins created $13.6 million. Browns got $10.915 million. Cowboys getting $10.9 million. Commanders getting $4 million. Broncos $3.75 million. And the Cardinals $3.215 million freed up in cap space for their post June 1st cuts. The Giants adding some veteran leadership to their personnel side. They have added former Titans VP of Player Personnel Ryan Cowden as their executive advisor to General Manager Joe Shane. Really solid move. I think a guy that was getting GM interviews last year possibly could be a GM next year. We shall see. And Titans punter Brett Kern has retired 13 years in the NFL. Really solid career for Brett Kern there. Played with a couple different teams. Lastly, the Titans, though. But he went undrafted out of Toledo in 2008, played with the Broncos, and then with the Titans the majority of the rest of his career, from 2009, midway through the 2009 season, played 6 games for the Broncos and then 10 games for the Titans. And then he played 16 games all the way up until 2021. Played just 13 and 14 games, and then 4 with the Eagles in their NFC Championship 2022 season last year. So great career for Brett Kern. Crossed the 1,000 punt threshold last year with Philly. 1,006 punts in his career, 46,136 yards, 45.9 yards per punt, 40,867 net yards, 40.6 net yards per punt, and his career long was a 79-yarder, 58 touchbacks, 5.8% touchback percentage, 396 downed inside the 20. That's a 39.4% inside 20 rate, and then 5 blocks. First team All-Pro, one-time first team All-Pro, one-time second team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, and yeah, again, a solid. So he's waived by the Broncos in 2009. Played for the Titans the majority of his career. But yeah, again, very excellent career for Brett Kern. Never the strongest leg, but got it done for a lot of years in the NFL. Great career, Mr. Kern. We have some more guys going from the XFL to the NFL. Those 3 guys are the Commanders, signing Vipers tight end Brandon Dillon, and then a couple wide receivers from St. Louis. The Chargers signed Battlehawks wide receiver Darius Shepard, going to help them as a depth receiver and a returner. And then the Bills, they signed Battlehawks wide receiver Marcel Aitman, big body there for Buffalo. Should try to help out and win one of those last couple wide receiver slots. And then another wide receiver getting a workout today. The Colts worked out former Bucs wide receiver Brashad Perriman. So Indy trying to fill some spots there at wideout. Let's go on to the USFL pick standings. Yes, I am still in the lead. Mark and I tied at 2-2. Mark 3 games back, 14-14, still at 500. I'm 17-11. Logan, another bad week, 1-3, 12-6 for him there. 5 games back now from me, 2 games back from Mark in second. Lone Wolves last week, Logan was 0-1. He picked the Breakers. They lost to the Stallions. And then I was 1-1. The Maulers lost to the Stars, and the Showboats, they beat the Generals. I think that was who they beat. I don't remember. But anyways, let's go to the picks this week. Tomorrow we have the Gamblers at the Maulers. We are all over the Houston Gamblers, and I think for a good reason. I think Pittsburgh has struggled after their couple wins. They really haven't been able to right the ship. The defense has surprisingly not been the greatest after they were dominant through the first half of the season. And Troy Williams has struggled. They really can't run the ball with Garrett Groshek and whoever else they try to run it with. It's really Troy Williams' legs have been the leading rusher. So I think Houston showed a lot last week, even in a loss to Memphis. That's who the Showboats beat. But anyways, I think Kenji Bahar and the Gamblers get it righted this week. Mark Thompson has a good day, even against a tough defensive front. And they win this one. They cover the spread as well. Maybe push it, but I think they do cover it. Total is 43.5. I'm going with the under. I'm just not sure about the Pittsburgh offense. And while Houston can score some points, I like the Pittsburgh defense to limit them a little bit and hold this one under 43.5. This one tomorrow is 12 p.m. on USA Network. Next game tomorrow, the Stars at the Stallions in Birmingham. We are all on Birmingham, 6-point favorite. That's a lot, I think, with how Philly has played. They're the number one seed in the North Division right now. And will they cover? I'm not sure. I don't really like the 6. If it was a little bit lower, maybe 4.5, I would take Birmingham on the spread. But 6 is a lot, especially with how these games have been going this year. Not many blowouts. So I'm going to go with the Stallions. Don't like the spread, though. I think Alex Magoo has himself a good day. They continue to lead that South Division, which they're up a game on Memphis, Houston, and New Orleans, all at 4-3. But I like Birmingham to get 6-2 here. Case Cook has struggled, and they've won. Somehow they're in first place. The other 3 teams are not the greatest in their division, though. Just saying. Total is 45.5. I like the over. The Stars are one of the worst defenses in the league. So give me the over on that one. 3 p.m. on NBC. And the first game on my birthday, Sunday is my birthday, and we have a lone wolf alert, and it is Mark going with the New Jersey Generals. I don't hate that. I was shocked when the Generals were announced as 2-point favorites at 2-5, even though they're at home. I think my Memphis Showboats, which Logan agrees, I think we can get it done. 5 straight wins if they get this one. Hope for a Birmingham loss, and you're tied at the top of the division there. But yeah, I just think that Memphis has been on fire. Cole Kelly is doing enough on offense. Their defense has really been the fuel for this team the last 4 games. And I think they continue to do that. They shut down Darius Victor. That's the key with New Jersey, is to shut down Darius Victor and make Kyle Lauletta or DeAndre Johnson, whichever one it is, to beat you. I think it's tougher with DeAndre Johnson because of his legs. Kyle Lauletta, a little bit easier, more of a pocket passer, doesn't really have the scrambling ability of Johnson. So I think if they can keep Johnson in the pocket, if he's the QB, or if Mr. Atkins can continue to have 5 pass deflections a game like he had last week, which was just ridiculous, won him co-defensive player of the year, co-defensive player of the week last week. I think that defense will continue to do well against New Jersey and hold this one as a low-scoring game, I think. But Cole Kelly and Kareth White has actually been very good in the run game the last couple of games. So I like them to run the ball against New Jersey, get this play-action game going. Cole Kelly runs the ball as well. So give me Memphis on this one. Total is 41.5. I'm rolling with the under. Like I said, I think that Memphis's defense has played outstanding, and I like both defenses to play well. Memphis wins this one. 1 p.m. on Fox. And then finally, the Panthers at the Breakers. Breakers getting 3.5 points, which we all agree with. I think, look, Michigan somehow won last week against New Jersey. I don't see how they can win this week against New Orleans. New Orleans has lost 3 straight after starting 4-0. The Panthers know how that goes, losing 4 straight after starting 2-0, but they did get a win last week, like I said. I do think New Orleans, McLeod Bethel-Thompson has a good day against this Panthers defense, which hasn't been as good as it was early in the season. They figure it out finally. Wes Hills gets back on track because he hasn't been a factor the last couple of games. He gets in the end zone, I think, at least once, and New Orleans wins this one by at least 4, like the spread shows. Total is 43.5. Give me the over. Michigan, I think, gets enough points to get it over. 4 p.m. on Fox. Now let's get to the NFC South season preview. Very excited to do this. And I'm going to do the record predictions live, just so we have that on tape here. So starting off with Carolina Panthers, and these aren't always going to be quarterback pictures, as you can see Bijan Robinson there for the Falcons. But what I try to do with the images on the season previews, I try to put a player for each team, or a couple players, as with the case of the Bucs here. A couple players that will greatly impact the success of their team this year. And most of the time it is the quarterback, but especially in the NFC South here, where you have 3 teams that will have new starting quarterbacks going into the season. I think the quarterbacks were prevalent here. So we're going to start off with Carolina. They had the number 1 overall pick. We'll talk about Bryce Young in a little bit. But re-signings, they re-signed tight end Ian Thomas, offensive tackle Cameron Irving, center Bradley Bozeman, defensive lineman Henry Anderson, linebacker Shaq Thompson, kicker Eddie Pinheiro, and long snapper J.J. Jansen. Free agency, I think they did a very good job. Quarterback Andy Dalton, great backup there. Wide receivers Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, and Damiere Byrd. Tight end Hayden Hurst. Guard Justin McCray. Defensive tackles Deshaun Williams and Shai Tuttle. Linebacker Kamu Grugier-Hill. Safeties Von Bell and Eric Rowe. Loved pretty much all the moves that the Panthers got in free agency. Andy Dalton as a veteran backup, going to be a great tool for Bryce Young to utilize there. The wide receivers, I think they all fit roles. Damiere Byrd going to be more of a returner. But Adam Thielen, possession guy over the middle. DJ Chark, your more explosive receiver on the outside as well. And then Hayden Hurst, I think, is a veteran tight end, had a great season in Cincinnati last year. Going to help Mr. Young over the middle. And Justin McCray is adding more offensive line depth there. The defensive additions were also very good. Shai Tuttle, underrated defensive tackle with the Saints, going to play a pivotal role next to Derek Brown this year. Kamu Grugier-Hill, a guy that can play special teams and be a stud on it, and then also play defense well if you need him to. And then Von Bell, I think, was fantastic signing. They needed a safety to help out that secondary, pretty young corner group. So getting Von Bell back there as well in a strong safety box hybrid linebacker role, I think will be a nice addition. The losses, quarterbacks Sam Darnold and P.J. Walker, running back Deontay Foreman. They traded away wide receiver DJ Moore to move up to number 1. Wide receivers Andre Roberts, Rashard Higgins, and Preston Williams are all still free agents right now. Offensive guard Pat Elflein is a free agent. Defensive tackle Matt Ioannidis is also a free agent. They lost linebacker Corey Littleton, and then linebacker Damian Wilson is a free agent, as is corners TJ Carey and Justin Burris. And then they traded away kicker Zane Gonzalez to San Francisco. So I think they did a nice job of filling what they lost. Most of the quarterback group gone. Matt Corral, the only guy returning. So they add Andy Dalton, Bryce Young to that group. I think that solidified that area. Tight end, I thought they did an upgrade. They re-signed Ian Thomas early in the offseason. I hated that move. Thought they needed an upgrade on him. Should have let him go, which they got an upgrade in Hayden Hurst, I think. And then Tommy Grugier-Hill comes in for the Corey Littleton signing or loss. And then they get Miles Sanders. I can't believe I forgot Miles Sanders there on the free agent signings. That was a big one that filled and I think overfilled the Deontay Foreman loss. Then the three receivers, they're kind of doing receiver by committee with filling DJ Moore's absence. Let's look at the schedule here. So week 1, they are at the Falcons. Just two. So 2 primetime games. You have week 2 and week 10. Week 1, though, at the Falcons. I like the Falcons early. So I'm going to give the Panthers a loss. I think that's a tough game to go to Atlanta if Bryce Young is starting. I know it's not set that Bryce Young is going to start week 1. Andy Dalton maybe. And if Andy Dalton starts, I think possibly they could win that one. But if Bryce Young is a starter, I don't like them winning that one on the road in week 1. Week 2, I mean, if Bryce Young's a starter, look at this, Rook. You get a primetime game in your second week of the season versus the Saints. I think that's going to be a tough one, but I think they win that one. It's going to be close, but I think they win their home opener. At Seattle, I just don't think they have enough firepower to keep up with Seattle there, and their defense got better there in Seattle, so I'm going to give them a loss on that one. This is another win. It's a sneaky win against the Vikings. Adam Thielen gets his revenge, scores a touchdown in this one. It's kind of a gut feeling win as well. I don't think the Vikings are going to be as good as people think they will. Their defense got overturned a lot, and their secondary scares me. So I think Bryce Young will take advantage of the secondary and get the win in that one. Weeks 5 and 6, I like as losses against in Detroit and in Miami. Those are 2 tough places to play, especially Miami. Both offenses are very good, so I'm going to give the Panthers losses on those ones, and the Dolphins' defense should be excellent as well this year. Versus the Texans and the Colts, week 8 and 9, so they're going to get 3 straight very intriguing games. They play C.J. Stroud week 8. I don't think it's going to be Anthony Richardson by week 9. I think Minshew is still going to have the reins. So, but I still like the Panthers as better teams than both of those teams. So give me the number 1 pick over the number 2 pick in C.J. Stroud week 8, and then give me the Panthers winning against the Colts in week 9. Week 10 at the Bears. This is a very close one. This is Thursday night football, short week, but I think they get a win there. So 3 straight wins. They're looking good. And then they run into a tough schedule at the end. The Cowboys, they're hosting in Carolina, but I think that's a loss. Cowboys are too good for them. Titans have really fallen off. So I'm going to give the Panthers a win. I think their roster is just better, even though they still have Derrick Henry in Tennessee. But I think the Panthers can work at shutting him down a little bit. At the Buccaneers, I'm going to give them a loss there. That should be a close game, as should all the divisional games, I think. In New Orleans, I think the Saints are going to be fine by then, so that's a loss. Then they get their revenge by winning against Atlanta. The Packers in Carolina, that's a tough one. But I do think they lose that. They lose in Jacksonville, and then they lose. They get swept by the Bucs to end the season. So I have the Panthers in Bryce Young's inaugural season going 7-10. I think that's a really solid record for Bryce Young. I would take that. I think the couple key wins there, the sneaky ones, were against the Saints week 2 on Monday Night Football. Then the Vikings won in week 4. Starting out 2-2 would be great. And then they get the 3-game win streak. Just the second half of the schedule, I think, is tough, mixed with 4 divisional games. They get their bye week in week 7, which I think is a good time to have it. I would have liked 8 or 9. But having the non-divisional opponents of the Vikings, Lions, Dolphins, Cowboys, Packers, and Jags, I think those are a couple tough ones. But overall, I think the Panthers' schedule is pretty solid. And like I said, 7-10, I think, is a very good record in Bryce Young's first year. Now let's get to fantasy here. We're talking strictly veterans before we get to the rookies. So in fantasy, we're looking at Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard as the running backs. I think Miles Sanders, I don't know where his ADP is right now, but I think he might be getting underdrafted right now. I think a lot of people think maybe he went to Carolina. Carolina's not going to be that good. But I think Miles Sanders could be a sneaky RB2 at this point. And if you're doing a draft right now, I think you could get him for very cheap. Again, like I said, I haven't checked his ADP, so I'm not very sure where he's going. But I do like it. Chuba Hubbard, I don't think has any value. Miles Sanders has had some injury issues in the past. Stayed healthy all year last year, though, for Philly. So I have to believe Chuba Hubbard is going to be a guy where you're going to draft him like maybe with your last pick or maybe a couple rounds before that. Just if you have Miles, maybe draft him. I don't think you need him, though. I think you can find better handcuffs out there, especially at the rookie running backs. Let's move on to wide receivers. Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall Jr., I think the guy is DJ Chark, really. Not sure who the number one's going to be, right? Since we haven't seen them play any games. But I would not be surprised if DJ Chark comes out of this season as the Panthers' number one wide receiver, because he hasn't been a number one before. But they really don't have a number one guy. It's a lot of number twos, Chark, Thielen, and Marshall. We'll talk about Mingo, and then they have Shenault and Shi Smith, a draft pick. But I just think DJ Chark is your guy if you're looking at Panthers receivers. Adam Thielen is a quality wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside, depending on how Bryce Young plays. Don't see much value in Terrace Marshall except for Dynasty. But he's had a couple years now, and he's improved. I will say that. He has improved from his rookie year to his second year, going into his third season now. So if you're doing a dynasty startup, I think you might be able to get Terrace Marshall relatively cheap. Other than that, I don't see a lot of value in him in redraft leagues currently. Tight end, Hayden Hurst. I love this guy. He is going to be a sneaky, very sneaky tight end too, with definite tight end 1 upside. I think he's going to be Bryce Young's favorite guy. I mean, he had all these receivers at Alabama, and then he had guys like Irv Smith Jr. I think maybe Irv Smith probably was too old for him. But he had guys like Cameron Latu and a couple other ones that he relied on, not as much because he had all those wide receivers. Doesn't have the wide receivers here, so I think he's going to rely on Hurst a lot this year. Give me Hayden Hurst as a top, let's say, top 15 at the very worst, I think. I think definitely a top half tight end in the league in fantasy. So, yeah, give me Hayden Hurst. I like that selection there. Kicker Eddie Pinheiro. Going to be a lower level kicker. I don't see him as a starting kicker, especially Panthers might struggle with the rookie quarterback. scoring a lot of points. Maybe they'll get into field goal range a lot. Maybe he'll kick a lot of field goals. That's your goal right there with the kickers. But I don't like Pinheiro necessarily as a draftable kicker at this point. Panthers defense, I think they're going to be mid-pack. So not really draftable unless you're drafting two defenses. I think they're a nice stash if you have the space to keep a second defense. Could turn into something good this year, but I don't see them as a starting caliber defense at this point. Let's talk about the two rookies. Bryce Young, right? Dynasty is where you're always looking most for rookies. And I'm in love with Bryce Young. I wanted him so badly for Carolina. I think he's going to be the savior of the franchise. And I wish I would have had my Bryce Young jersey, but I don't know why it takes months to ship a jersey, but that's a different argument. Anyways, Bryce Young, though, I think he's going to be a great option in Dynasty. Definitely going to draft him there. Redraft is so-so. If you miss out on your backup quarterback, I think it's a quality flyer in the late rounds in a redraft league to take a guy like Bryce Young with a lot of upside. Doesn't have the greatest supporting cast, but has a good offensive line that should protect him. And yeah, I think Dynasty, he's a stud if you need a quarterback. And like I said, if you miss out on your backup quarterback spot in redraft, take him with one of your last couple picks. And then the other offensive rookie here, wide receiver Jonathan Mingo. Look, he's going to be another guy that I think is draftable in dynasty leagues. Not much value in redraft at this point in the offseason. I could see him being a midseason waiver pickup if he takes a hold of that wide receiver 3 spot from Terrace Marshall, or if the likes of DJ Chark or Adam Thielen get injured. I think Jonathan Mingo has some nice upside as a 6'2", 225 big wide receiver. We know these Ole Miss receivers have a history of working out well in the league. Second-round pick, so has some draft pedigree also. So I really like him, and not going to draft him in redraft, but monitor him throughout the season to see if he's getting more work. Okay, let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons. Re-signings here, fullback Keith Smith, wide receiver Scotty Miller, offensive tackle Caleb McGarry, guard Chris Lindstrom, edge rusher Lorenzo Carter, punter Bradley Pinion, free agent signings, quarterback Taylor Heineke, wide receiver Mac Hollins. They traded for tight end Jonnu Smith, defensive tackles David Onyemata and Calais Campbell, edge rusher Bud Dupree, linebackers Andre Smith and Caden Ellis. They traded for corner Jeff Okudah. They also signed corners Mike Hughes and Trey Flowers, and safety Jesse Bates III. I was very shocked with Atlanta in free agency. They made a lot of moves. The Jesse Bates signing was a major move, as well as David Onyemata got more money than I thought he would. And then they brought in some pieces later in free agency in the second and third waves that were nice additions that are going to fill some roles. Mac Hollins is going to be a starting wide receiver like he was in Las Vegas. So he's going to play a lot of snaps as the wide receiver too, because they really don't have anything at wide receiver behind Drake London. Taylor Heineke is going to be a good sounding board and a potential spot starter if Desmond Ridder struggles. And then you're going to look at Jonnu Smith as a tight end 2 to Kyle Pitts. Should run 12 personnel, I think. 1 running back, 2 tight ends, a good portion of the season with Bijan Robinson now in the fold. And they filled a lot of their secondary issues with 3 corners there as well. Losses in the offseason, quarterback Marcus Mariota Wide receivers, Olamide Zacchaeus and Demir Bird. Tight ends, Anthony Ferkser and Michael Pruitt. He is a free agent. Offensive tackles, Jermaine Ifedi and Chuma Edoga. Linebackers, Rashawn Evans and Nick Kwiatkowski. They are both free agents. Corner, Isaiah Oliver. Corner, Rashad Fenton. And corner, Casey Hayward. He is a free agent, as is long snapper Bo Brinkley. So I think the biggest things that they lost in free agency there were Marcus Mariota trading him for Taylor Heineke. I think that's a net loss there. And then they lost some offensive tackle depth, but they got that in the draft. And most of the pieces I don't think were big. The linebackers might have been, though. Kwiatkowski, and then Rashad Fenton, I think, was a lower level, lesser looked at loss that Atlanta suffered this year in the offseason. Let's look at the Falcons' schedule. So just trying to stick with what I had for the Panthers here. I have the Falcons winning week 1 at home against Carolina. Week 2, that's against the Packers. I think Jordan Love. No, let's go with the loss because I don't think the Falcons secondary will hold up enough against the Packers wide receivers early in the season. That is, if Jordan Love is on. Lions, I like that as a loss in Detroit, as well as the loss in London against the Jags. That is their only special game. They don't play any primetime games this year, do the Falcons. Home against the Texans, I think they can win that one. I think it's going to be a close one against the Commanders in Atlanta, but I do think they can win that one as well. They lose in Tampa. They get run over by Derrick Henry in Nashville. Again, I think this will be a close one, but I think they lose against Minnesota. They beat the Cardinals in Week 10. They're just a dumpster fire out there in Arizona. Week 11 is their bye, so they go into that 4-6. Not terrible. Within striking distance, I would say, at 4-6. Have to just win some more. They lose in New York to Aaron Rodgers. They do win at home against Tampa. I have them losing against the Panthers in Carolina. And then I think they can beat an Anthony Richardson-led Colts team in Week 16. They win against a Chicago Bears team in Week 17 in Chicago. And then they lose in New Orleans Week 18. Oh, I forgot Week 12 against the Saints. They win that one. So the Falcons, I have one game better than the Panthers, 8-9. They go through a couple losing streaks, finish off well, though, winning 3 out of the last 5 as their schedule eases up in the second half, unlike the Panthers where it gets harder. But 8-9 for Atlanta, I think that's a nice record in Desmond Ridder's first full season as the starter. I appreciate the heart mark on Facebook. The fantasy here, let's look at quarterback Desmond Ridder in his first season as the starter, second year in the league, though. I think he did well down the stretch. Falcons really improved, I think, the last couple of games last year. I don't think he's going to be a sexy pick, though, in fantasy. He's going to struggle. Like I mentioned, they really have 0 wide receivers. Drake London is your guy, and then you have Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith at tight end. I do not believe in Scotty Miller, nor do I really believe in Mac Hollins. The rest of their receivers are just not great. So I don't think Desmond Ritter is going to be that great of an option in fantasy. Pick him up if you need to on a bye week sub. Tyler Algier. Oh, Tyler Algier. What could have been, sir. I hate that they drafted Bijan because I mentioned this before. I have Tyler Algier in Dynasty that I drafted last year, and he ran for 1,000 yards. So I was like, bro, why do you need another running back? I don't know. I think Tyler Algier is a suitable sub. And I think early on in the season, you can get good value out of Tyler Algier. Maybe trade him if you notice Bijan getting a lot more work. That is, if they don't give Bijan the start right away. I think early in the year, Algier has value, but later on in the season, there's absolutely no value for Tyler Algier. But a good handcuff, I think, for a rookie running back that might struggle. Wide receivers, Drake London, Mac Hollins. Drake London is a great option in fantasy, despite the possible subpar quarterback play. I do like Drake London as a viable fantasy option. We saw this with Chris Olave, who I'll talk about with the Saints in a couple minutes. But we saw this with Chris Olave last year, subpar quarterback play in New Orleans, but he produced a lot. We've seen this with DeAndre Hopkins when he was in Houston. And even last year, he put up 700 yards and 60 receptions with Arizona in just 10 games. So I think Drake London could be a top 15 option at wide receiver. You're going to get him somewhere in the third or fourth rounds of your fantasy draft, and definite dynasty option to build around the next couple of years, especially if he leaves Atlanta at some point, I think, or if Desmond Ritter ends up being the guy, could be a valuable piece there. Mac Hollins is going to be a guy I don't think many are going to draft. You can. Again, there are targets to be had in this offense. Most of the targets are going to go to Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. But I do think you're going to be able to get some nice wide receiver 2 type targets out of Mac Hollins. And maybe, just maybe, he can turn you a wide receiver 3 profit there in fantasy this year. I don't know, though. I wouldn't trust it. I'm not personally going to draft Mac unless I have to, and there aren't any other options that I like. I would stay away, though. You can, though. Just saying. Tight ends here, Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith. Jonnu, they traded from New England. Not going to be that great of an option. Kyle Pitts, though, I do like him. It's so-so. I'm not sure, he's been up and down. His rookie year, he struggled. Still went over 1,000 yards. Let's see how he does this year, though. Sure, go ahead and draft him as your starter. I'm not a big Kyle Pitts fan, though. So, especially with the at quarterback, Kyle Pitts isn't really a guy that I am looking at for tight end anyways. I like to get my tight end kind of early and then get a pretty good one a couple rounds later as my backup flex option. But yeah, Jonnu Smith, I think, isn't going to have any value. Kyle Pitts, just like Drake London, good value for a Dynasty League if you're doing a startup. Younghoe Koo, your kicker for Atlanta, excellent option. He's going to be drafted in a lot of leagues. I think he's going to kick a lot of field goals this year, actually, just like he did maybe a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I think Koo is a very good option here in fantasy. Definitely should be one of the top kickers on the board with how strong of a leg he has. And like I mentioned, I just have a gut feeling that Atlanta's going to kick a lot of field goals this year. Falcons defense, I am not drafting them at all. Very suspect secondary, even with all the additions. Will they make it work? That is the issue I have in my head with Atlanta's secondary. Jeff Okudah, AJ Terrell. AJ Terrell's the stud. But Jeff Okudah, Mike Hughes is their starting 3 at corner. Richie Grant, Jesse Bates, Jalen Hawkins, the 3 safeties. Their defensive front got a lot better with Calais Campbell and David Onyemata. One of those guys gets hurt, though. They don't have quality depth, and their pass rush is still not great. They do have Arnold Ebiketie, who they drafted last year. They drafted Zach Harrison this year. I'm just not very sold on it. The pass rush, anyways. Love their off-ball linebackers, Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, guy out of Montana State they drafted last year. Michael Walker as well, and Nate Landman, my guy Nate Landman from Colorado. But yeah, I don't like the Falcons defense at all. Do not draft them. And then just one rookie offensive skill position player to look at, Bijan Robinson, right? He's the number one pick in your rookie dynasty league drafts. You can see why as Generals running back Darius Victor likes to say, thick thighs save lives. And you can see with Bijan's thighs there. Not as big as Saquon's, I would say, but definitely a sizable candidate there. Anyways, Bijan is going to be a stud. He's going to get you PPR points out of the backfield a lot. I think they're going to throw the ball to him in space, which he did more of that in his last season at Texas this past fall. But he's going to be a running threat. I think the Falcons are going to lean on their run. They're going to want to do what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee. Run the rock, use the play action off that. So I think Bijan's going to get a lot of carries in his rookie year, and he's going to get a lot of work. So definitely, I'm not a person that's going to take him, though. He's getting taken way too high in redraft leagues right now, even in best ball leagues. I think he went in the first round. Like, I am not sold that much. So good for y'all that pick him that high. Good luck with that. I'm taking a veteran that I know is going to produce, that doesn't have any possibility of hitting a rookie wall. I'm not looking at him. But Dynasty, not that I had the opportunity to draft him because he'll go number one, but Dynasty, definitely, if you have the number one pick, it's an option unless you already have good running backs, and then maybe you draft him and trade him to someone else. Who knows? Okay, let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the two guys I have here on the slide, Kyle Trask, number 2 there at the top right. Baker Mayfield, number 6 on the bottom left. Those are your two quarterbacks for Tampa Bay this year. No one knows right now who the starter week 1 will be, and that's probably when we'll know. It is week 1. So let's get to the re-signings here. Wide receiver Russell Gage, guard Aaron Stinney, edge rusher Anthony Nelson, linebacker Levante David, and corner Jamel Dean. Really liked all those guys returning positions of need if they would have left. Free agent signings. Bucs were cap-strapped because of Tom Brady's retirement. Big dead money cap hit because of him. So didn't have a lot of maneuverability with that. So they bargain bin shopped. Quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, John Walford, they got both from L.A. With the Rams. Running back Chase Edmonds, guard Matt Filer, defensive tackle Greg Gaines, safety Ryan Neal, and kicker Chase McLaughlin. Again, not big names other than Baker Mayfield, but serviceable guys that will help this team this year. Losses, a lot of them in Tampa because they didn't have the money to keep a lot of guys. Quarterback Tom Brady, he retired, like I mentioned. Quarterback Blaine Gabbert. Running back Leonard Fournette is a free agent. Running back Gio Bernard, he retired. Wide receiver Julio Jones is a free agent, as is wide receiver Brashad Perriman, like I mentioned, working out with the Colts today. Wide receiver Scotty Miller, also going to Atlanta. Tight end Cameron Brate is a free agent. They released him. Offensive tackle Donovan Smith. Guard Shaq Mason, they traded to Houston. Defensive tackle Raheem Nunez-Roches. Defensive tackles Akeem Hicks and William Golston, both free agents currently. Edge rusher Carl Nassib is a free agent. Linebacker Jannard Avery. corner Sean Murphy-Bunting, safety Keanu Neal, and Mike Edwards, and safety Logan Ryan is a free agent, as is kicker Ryan Suckup. So, like I mentioned, a lot of losses. Obviously, the GOAT is the biggest one that turns this team upside down. Really tough to lose him, but they thought they had their guy in Kyle Trask, and he just has not been great the last his first couple of years in the league. So they got Baker Mayfield instead. I don't like them losing Blaine Gabbert. I think he could have been a serviceable option this year for them, but didn't have the money to keep him. And I don't think a lot of the other guys really hurt them. The Donovan Smith release was surprising, to say the least. One of the better left tackles in the league. And then Sean Murphy-Bunting really hurts this secondary, losing him as well. And Shaq Mason, the trade, I thought they didn't really have line depth, and they traded Mason anyways. But they did sign Matt Filer, re-signed Stinney there. So the guard spots are somewhat solidified. Let's go to the schedule here. Week 1 at the Vikings. That is a loss. I don't think Kyle Trask nor Baker Mayfield will be ready for Minnesota. And it's going to be the Vikings offense that wins that game. Week 2 versus the Bears. I think they can get that one done. It's in Tampa, so I'm going to give the Bucs the win there. Week 3, home against the Eagles. That's a Monday Night Football. Nope, not giving them a chance there. Week 4 in New Orleans. Nope, that is a loss as well. Start 1-3. That's tough for whichever quarterback starts 1-3. Week 5 bye. That is very early. That's going to be a tough one. Looking at what their schedule, they have the toughest schedule, I think, when I looked in their division. Yeah, they have the toughest one just because they won the division last year. So they get the first place schedule. The next NFC North team they play is home against the Lions. I don't like any of these 4 NFC South teams against Detroit. Maybe the Saints. We'll have to see when that one is and where it is. Home against the Falcons, and I think I have them winning that one. Yes, I have them beating the Falcons week 7 in Buffalo for a Thursday night short week. No chance. In Houston, I do think they can eke that one out. Versus the Titans, again, it's in Tampa Bay, so I will give the Bucs that win there. And then in San Francisco, nope. At Indianapolis, might be Gardner Minshew at that point still. So I actually like Gardner Minshew to beat the Bucs. Week 13, home against the Panthers. I have them winning that one. Week 14 at the Falcons. I have them losing that one. At Green Bay, week 15. I think they eke that one out. Lose against the Jags. Versus the Saints, I'm going to give them a win on that one. And then in Carolina, I have them winning that one as well. So good end to the season. 4 out of the last 6. 8-9 for Tampa Bay as well. Ties them with Atlanta. Now, the tiebreaker there would be head-to-head, which I think is a split, which it is. Then we'd go to divisional record. So 1-1 there. 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 4-2. So I have 4-2 in division for Tampa Bay. The Falcons, however, they are 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 3-1. They are 3-3. So yes, the Bucs would win the division right now, based off those three teams. Let's go to the fantasy aspects. This one's very interesting. So you got the quarterbacks. You got to stay clear. You have to. Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, no one knows which one's going to be. You have to stay clear of those two guys. Not drafting either. Baker is the more likely guy to get drafted as a QB2 if you do get one. It's a very press the red button emergency move if you have to draft Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask in your league. But if you're going to draft one, draft both. Let's go to the running backs, Rachaad White, Chase Edmonds, and I even wrote down Keyshawn Vaughn as the third running back because I'm not sure he's out of the picture just yet. Now, Rachaad White is the incumbent. He's going to be your starter. I don't like this ground attack. Look at their offensive line. Tristan Wirfs is a stud at left tackle. Matt Filer's pretty solid at left guard. Ryan Jensen returns at center. And then you have rookie Cody Mauch at right guard. Luke Gadecki at right tackle, a second-year player. That right side I don't trust at all. So I'm worried about Rachaad White. And he wasn't really a between the tackles guy at Arizona State as far as what I watched when he played there. So I don't really like the running backs. I think Chase Edmonds could be your guy if he gets enough carries and whatnot. He wasn't utilized at all in Denver last year. So I like Chase Edmonds actually as a sneaky draft gem late. Definitely, if you're drafting White, handcuff him, get Chase Edmonds. But yeah, I think if you're at the end of the draft taking a flyer on some players, Chase Edmonds could be available and a good selection. And then Keyshawn Vaughn, like I said, monitor him during the season. Maybe one of the top two gets hurt and Vaughn takes the reins. Who knows? Wide receivers, here's where the fantasy comes in for Tampa Bay. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage. I think all three are going to be viable fantasy options, even with the suspect quarterback play. We know what Mike Evans can do. All he does is create 1,000-yard seasons out of nothing, even with quarterback play that has been not great in the past before Tom Brady got there. So, yeah, Mike Evans is a stud. He's going to go second round probably. And that's going to be that. Chris Godwin has been up and down the last 2 years. I still like Chris Godwin, Penn State, who we are. But he's going to be your later mid-round kind of guy, 6th, 7th round, I think. Maybe earlier than that. A lot of people like him. But the quarterback play, I think, should scare some people off. And hopefully it does that way. People like me can look for bargain bin shopping in the mid rounds of the draft and get Chris Godwin, even though I'm spilling all my secrets to the hundreds of people watching this that I know. But Russell Gage, I don't think has much fantasy value. Normally wide receiver threes don't. I think he did have some value when Tom Brady was there. I just don't know how much they're going to run 3 wide receiver sets this year. Even though that is kind of the Byron Leftwich offense. But I think that Russell Gage is kind of null and void at this point without Tom Brady there anymore. Tight end Cade Otton. I love Cade Otton. Loved him last year. Drafted him in my fantasy, my dynasty draft. Think he's a good option. Baker Mayfield loves tight ends. Okay. So, yes, give me Cade Otton. I think he is a fringe starting, I should say, caliber fantasy tight end this year. You can pick him up as your tight end 2, or wait if you're waiting to get your tight end 1. Cade Otton is a great selection later in the draft. He's going to be a low-level tight end 1 to start, just until we see what the chemistry between him and Mayfield is. But I really loved Cade Otton, and I think he's going to be a stud. So yeah, draft him as a tight end 2 at the very worst. New kicker in Tampa, Chase McLaughlin, has been very good in the past with the teams that he's been with. San Francisco, most notably Indianapolis. He kicked there the most in his career. He's not going to get drafted. I don't believe in this Bucs offense enough to draft Chase McLaughlin as my kicker, and the fact that he hasn't been able to win a job anywhere yet is troubling to me as well. So Chase McLaughlin off the board for me. Bucs defense. What do we got here? So they drafted Kalijah Kancey in round 1. They still have Vita Vea, Logan Hall from 2 years ago, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka as well from a couple drafts ago. They got the linebackers, White, David, and they still have Shaq Barrett, who they re-signed last year. Jamel Dean, they surprisingly got back. And Carlton Davis is still there as well. So I think their defense is going to be pretty decent. They're kind of thin at some spots, especially secondary. But I think they will be a mid-tier, kind of like the Panthers, just maybe a little bit better than Carolina, actually. So I think they're a good backup defense that could turn into a starting defense if their young players work and their old players don't regress too much. And we have 2 rookies to talk about. Wide receiver Trey Palmer. I love Trey Palmer. Struggled with drops last year. That's why he dropped, no pun intended, to the 6th round, 191st overall for Tampa Bay. That was a steal for Jason Light there in the draft. Now he's not going to do a lot this year because he's got some work to do behind the top 3. But there's really not a lot of competition behind those 3, so I think he's going to be a wide receiver 4 for them. That could push Russell Gage for the wide receiver 3 spot. And we've seen Godwin and Gage both have injury issues in the past, so I would not be surprised if Trey Palmer ends up the year as Bucs wide receiver 3. So with that being said, draft him in your dynasty leagues. I think he's a good option in if you have 3 rounds. The last round, I think Trey Palmer could be a good option. My dynasty league, we do 5, so I think definitely in the 4th or 5th round, Trey Palmer is a great option there. But I love him. He's going to turn into something, be a downfield threat for Baker Mayfield, and a punt returner as well. The other rookie tight end, Payne Durham, is the backup tight end right now to Cade Otton. He has no value. I don't like him in dynasty leagues either because I love Cade Otton, so it's kind of a sticky situation there. But I would stay away from Payne Durham in all leagues currently unless Otton gets injured, and then Durham is going to be the hottest waiver wire target among tight ends, probably. Okay, let's go to the final team here, the New Orleans Saints. Re-signings, quarterback Jameis Winston, wide receiver Michael Thomas, guard Andres Pete, tight end Juwan Johnson, edge rusher Tino Passanio, corner Isaac Yiadom, safety JT Gray, special teams ace, kicker Will Lutz, and punter Blake Gillikin. Very key to get Will Lutz. Michael Thomas was kind of a flyer there. But Andres Pete, Juwan Johnson, definitely needed them guys back. Free agent signings. Quarterback Derek Carr, that's the big one. There he is. Allen there in the picture. You got running back Jamal Charles, tight end Jesse James, tight end Foster Moreau, defensive tackles Nathan Shepard and Colin Saunders, corner Lonnie Johnson Jr., and safety Jonathan Abram as well. So, again, Saints always cap-strapped, right? Somehow fit the Derek Carr contract under their belt and got some defensive tackle help. They lost a lot of defensive tackles, which we'll talk about. But I really like the Jamal Williams signing after Mark Ingram went to free agency. Hasn't been signed yet. But that was the biggest one that I liked other than Derek Carr. Losses. Quarterback Andy Dalton, running backs Mark Ingram, Dwayne Washington, David Johnson, all free agents currently. Wide receiver Deontay Hardy and Marquez Callaway. Wide receiver Jarvis Landry is a free agent. They traded tight end Adam Troutman to the Broncos. Tight end Nick Vanette is a free agent. And then they lost defensive tackles David Onyemata, Marcus Davenport, and Shai Tuttle. Edge rusher Kentavious Street. Linebacker Caden Ellis. Linebacker Chase Hansen is a free agent, as is corner Chris Harris Jr. and safety Daniel Sorensen. And they also lost safety Justin Evans. So a lot lost specifically on the defense, but it's actually even. They lost 9 players on each side of the ball. Running back room was decimated, but they did re-sign Dwayne Washington, actually, it looks like. Jamal Williams, Kendry Miller added there to help that out. Andy Dalton gone, but they drafted Jake Hayner to be their third quarterback. Wide receivers were filled in a little bit, anyways, with the James Washington signing and drafting of A.T. Perry. The D-tackle exodus was crazy, though. They re-signed Malcolm Roach, Brian Bracey they drafted, and they also got Jack Heflin from the XFL, the Houston Roughnecks. Other than that, I think the safeties were a big loss, but they do still have Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, and they drafted Jordan Howden, signed Jonathan Abram. So replacements there. Let's go to the Saints schedule here. Week 1 versus the Titans. I'm not sure about those defensive tackles. I think it's a loss. It's in New Orleans, but I just think Derrick Henry's going to run them over at the defensive tackle spot. Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard there. At the Panthers, week 2, that is a loss on Monday Night Football. At the Packers, week 3, I think they can win that one. I think that is where they get their first win of the season. They are home against the Bucs week 4. I have them winning that one. At the Patriots week 5. I think Derek Carr can beat the Patriots. I'm not a big believer in New England. They win in Houston. I don't think Houston's going to win many this year. Home against the Jags. I don't like anyone in this division beating Jacksonville. That's a Thursday night game, by the way. In Indianapolis, I like them winning that. Home against the Bears. This is an upset special waiting to happen. Home against the Bears, they lose that one. In Minnesota, I think they lose that one by a kick. Bye week 11, so late one, but I think 11 is fine there. In Atlanta, week 12, that is a loss. Home against the Lions, that is a loss. They host the Panthers. That is a win. They upset the Giants in the Superdome there. Week 15 in LA to face the Rams on Thursday night. Week 16, I do not like the Rams, so that is a win for New Orleans. In Tampa, week 17, I have the Saints losing that one. And then home against the Falcons, week 18, I had them winning that. So 9-8 is your division winning New Orleans Saints. I know my guys, London and Zach, will be very excited to hear that news. Once they see the podcast, 9-8 NFC South Division champs for Derek Carr's first season in New Orleans. Now let's go to fantasy for the Saints. Derek Carr, I just mentioned him. I think he's a great option. Best quarterback in the division this year. He's going to be a quarterback 2, I think, in your drafts. I think you can get him. He's turning into sort of what Phillip Rivers and Big Ben used to be for me in fantasy. I loved waiting on a quarterback and getting guys like them in the mid rounds of the fantasy draft, not having to spend big on a quarterback. So, yes, Derek Carr is a guy I think you can get as a backup quarterback or a starter, even possibly late in the mid rounds. There you go. That's my draft secret for Derek Carr. Running back, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams. If you are drafting Alvin Kamara, you absolutely must have Jamal Williams. Kamara's legal situation is still not solved. We have no clue what's going on with it. So I'm drafting Jamal Williams all day. If I'm drafting Alvin Kamara, I'm not really looking at Kamara. I've never really been a big Kamara guy. But they do have a very solid offensive line. Running ability should be there. And Jamal Williams was the leading touchdown scorer last year, rushing touchdown wise. So why not draft Jamal Williams as a possible starter? I think you can get Jamal Williams probably in the mid rounds as a handcuff, or as like I said, a starter if Kamara gets suspended, like he probably will, pending his legal stuff. Wide receivers: Chris Olave, Michael Thomas. Now I'm going to start with Michael Thomas. I'm not drafting him. You can't trust him. Like it's over, bud. It's been too many years, too many injuries. I can't possibly trust Michael Thomas to stay healthy. He's on a 1-year deal. Prove it. Prove that you can stay healthy, and I will gladly get the fantasy points scored against me, betting that you will not stay healthy for an entire year. So, yeah, not touching Michael Thomas. Chris Olave, though, absolutely love him. He's going to go very early in your drafts, second, third round there, and should provide Derek Carr with a bona fide wide receiver 1 option in the passing game. He's definitely going to be the number 1 option for this offense. Tight ends, I have 3 listed. This is interesting. Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill. Now, Juwan Johnson, I think, is going to be a very good guy. He's going to be a starting caliber tight end. Yes, you heard it here first. Juwan Johnson, starting caliber tight end. You know why? Look at what Derek Carr did in Las Vegas and Oakland. He loves to throw to tight ends. Look what Darren Waller was in Las Vegas. That is why. So I am going Juwan Johnson all day as a tight end 1 option. Top 7. Why not? Top 5 is a little bit much, but the tight end position is so volatile from year to year, you never know. So I like Juwan Johnson, though. Foster Moreau, excellent story, sir. Caps off to you. The man is playing while having cancer and doing chemotherapy. I mean, that's just ridiculous. However, his fantasy outlook is suspect. Juwan Johnson doesn't have a huge history of injuries, so I don't know how much he's going to get to play. Derek Carr does like him, as they had time together in Vegas, but possible tight end 2 to monitor. And of course, if you have an open roster spot, why not? Taysom Hill, his value has dropped dramatically. He is a tight end 3 now, and I just don't see him factoring in on this offense. I don't think they're not going to do what they used to do with him. They're not going to take Derek Carr out of the game for Taysom Hill. At least I don't think anymore. It seems like Dennis Allen wants to go away from that kind of offense, taking the quarterback out. So I think that Taysom Hill has little to no value at this point, unless we see him doing what he usually does early in the season. Kicker Will Lutz, I really like. It's been a while, though, since he's been a top option as a kicker in fantasy. So it's tough. He's a guy I'll draft, though. I think he's an option if you're one of the people that likes to do the kicker with the last pick. Definitely should be available. I don't think many people realize he's still with the Saints. So he has a massive leg still. So, yeah, definitely I think it's an option. I think there are better ones. I like to usually get one of the top ones, like Justin Tucker, Younghoe Koo, Harrison Butker, those kind of guys. But Lutz is a underrated guy that I like as well. Saints defense. Nope, not doing it. There's too many question marks. The secondary is suspect outside of Marshawn Lattimore. The defensive tackles scare me a lot. Other than Brian Breesy, I don't believe in Colin Saunders or Nathan Shepard. So the pass rush is not great outside of Cameron Jordan. So, yeah, I don't like the Saints defense at all. They're good. I don't think they're going to be as good as they used to be with all the defections this offseason. Let's turn this mood around, though, and go to rookies in fantasy, and I like both of them. Running back Kendre Miller is the first one. Dynasty. This guy, I am so excited for Kendre Miller in the New Orleans offense. Look, Jamal Williams, okay, that's fine. I think Kendre Miller is going to take his place. I do. I think with Alvin Kamara possibly being suspended, Kendre Miller is going to get a bona fide shot at making this team as the number one running back off the bat. And he can do it all. Can catch the ball out of the backfield like he did at TCU, can run the ball well between the tackles, sort of like Jamal Williams in that aspect, but he's younger, a lot younger. Jamal Williams in his 30s now. So I absolutely love Kendre Miller, especially in Dynasty. He is a guy I am targeting with a mid to late first-round pick in your Dynasty rookie drafts, and also a flyer late in redraft leagues if you have a roster spot. Wide receiver A.T. Perry is the other rookie we're going to talk about here for the Saints, and I also really like it. Look, the wide receiver 3 position is not set at all. You have a bunch of guys there. Rashid Shaheed was a rookie star out of nowhere, undrafted last year. Out of Weber State, had a great rookie season, just going straight downfield. He's the downfield threat in this offense right now. You also have Traquan Smith, James Washington, who they signed this offseason, Keith Kirkwood, Brian Edwards, Kirk Merritt as well. But I think A.T. Perry can do that. He can be that downfield guy that Shaheed is, but more. I think he does a lot more. He runs a lot more routes and can do more things in this offense than Shaheed can currently at where his development is. So I think A.T. Perry could end the season as the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 even, if the inevitable happens like it has the last couple of seasons and Michael Thomas gets injured. They're going to be looking for guys to take targets from Derek Carr and take a little bit of a load off of Chris Olave there. So A.T. Perry is also an excellent option later rounds of your rookie drafts in Dynasty or undrafted free agency. And also monitor him throughout the season on your waiver wire just to see what his target shares are looking like. And if Michael Thomas gets injured, A.T. Perry is the guy you should pick up. So that was a long show for just me, I think. But I think I gave you a lot of information, some records there. Just to recap the records there, I have the New Orleans Saints winning the NFC South in 2023, 9-8 record, getting it in as a winning record division champ. Bucks come in second for me at 8-9, 4-2 in the division. So that is why they are second place, because the Falcons are 8-9 as well, but just 3-3 in the division. And then the Carolina Panthers at 7-10 in last place. I think, again, this division is going to be very close this year. I think they're going to be scrappy most of the time, but I just think the team with the best quarterback is going to win the division, and that is the Saints currently. Now, the Panthers could be that in a couple years with Bryce Young, but I think right now it's Derek Carr and the Saints. They have the best quarterback. That's why they win the division. That is the show for today. Next Friday, we'll be back talking USFL Week 9, USFL game previews, and all your college football, NFL news as well. And on Tuesday, we'll have your AFC South division preview, season preview. Next Friday, we'll have your NFC West season preview. Hopefully, our guy John Babington will be able to hop back on, talk about his Seahawks and the rest of the division, Cardinals, Rams, and 49ers. As always, don't forget to follow us on all our social media at FAA Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, FAA_bets as well. FAApodcast.com is our website. You can check us out on all three that we are currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and obviously Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio as well. Thank you all for watching, and have a good weekend. We'll see you back on Tuesday.